Hello, my name is Miko Stulajter, and I am a third-year PhD student in the Joint Computational Science doctoral program. Here I will be giving a brief presentation on exploring chemical space, unraveling the structure of reaction networks. So what are reaction networks? Reaction networks are discrete representations of chemical space, which is the space containing all possible molecules for a set of atoms. Chemical space is extremely vast, diverse, and difficult to explore, being high-dimensional, so a discrete representation makes it easier to explore. We call these networks reaction networks because they contain reaction pathways, like the paths highlighted, going from reactants to products. The reaction networks are constructed using collection of molecules of fixed stoichiometry, number of atoms as nodes, and stoichiometry preserving transformation rules, bond breaks and bond formations as edges. To generate a network, a single node is initialized with a molecule or molecules, and given the rule set defined, all possibilities are enumerated. This generates networks like the one shown on the slide, and all reaction networks studied here are built with only carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen atoms. Creating the reaction networks is computationally expensive, so we compare the reaction networks with known generative models to gain an understanding of the underlying structure and behavior of reaction networks. We can use the generative models that best match the reaction networks to extrapolate and understand the reaction networks. The generative models are well studied and have had a lot of work done on them, so we can leverage that to gain understanding about reaction networks. The reaction networks are compared to generative models that are structured, such as regular lattice networks with non-periodic and periodic boundaries, random networks such as Erdos random networks and biparton random networks, and networks with a tunable rewiring probability or randomness, such as Strogatz networks and lattice networks with non-periodic and periodic boundaries with a rewiring probability. The generative models are compared to the reaction networks through several properties, but mainly through the fractal dimension, which measures the degrees of freedoms in the network, and the average square clustering coefficient, which measures the local connectivity between nodes. To carry out the comparison between the reaction networks and generative models, we compare four similarly sized reaction networks with comparably sized generative model networks, which have roughly the same number of nodes and edges as the reaction networks. We see the random networks tend to have a higher fractal dimension and average square clustering coefficient compared to the structured networks. We see the regular lattice networks approach their respective dimensionality, with the non-periodic boundary condition networks having a lower fractal dimension because of the edge effects. The networks with tunable rewiring have a rewiring probability chosen to give a similar average square clustering coefficient to the reaction networks. The Watt-Strogatz networks have a higher fractal dimension compared to the reaction networks for the same average square clustering coefficient, and we explore Watt-Strogatz networks with 6, 8, and 10 nearest neighbors. We see the reaction networks are closer to structured networks than random networks. The lattice networks with non-periodic boundaries and a small rewiring probability seem to best approximate the reaction networks. The best matching 3D network has a rewiring probability of 7.5%, while the 4D network has a rewiring probability of 5%. For lattice networks, we explore a rewiring probability of 0% to 70% and see that more rewiring causes the fractal dimension to increase and the average square clustering coefficient to decrease. We see an initial rapid increase in the fractal dimension and then a leveling off in how fast it increases. Even a small amount of rewiring will cause the fractal dimension to increase. The rewiring impacts the fractal dimension faster than the average square clustering coefficient. We see the lattice networks with non-periodic boundaries better approximate the reaction networks, and that the reaction networks are more structured than random. The reaction networks seem to be in the middle of the regime change of going from a rapid increase in fractal dimension to a shallow increase. The structure of the reaction networks is more structured than random. The reaction networks resemble low-dimensional regular lattices with intermittent random rewiring of edges. We see that randomness in a network causes the networks to become more complex and less interconnected locally. The structure of random networks and structured networks tend to be distinct with two clear regimes and network properties appearing. The results indicate that the reaction networks could be embedded into low-dimensional regular lattices, as their structure is very similar to them. Embedding the reaction networks into a regular lattice would allow us to leverage algorithms and methods specifically designed for regular lattice networks to explore and search reaction networks more efficiently. The regular structure and low dimensionality of the reaction networks will allow us to search reaction networks and in turn chemical space more efficiently. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you at the ACSESS event.